Good morning, members of the media, and good morning to the people of Bermuda who are tuned in online and on CITV. I'm pleased to join you today as we start the series of press events designed to provide additional context and detail of the government's plans for moving Bermuda beyond the pandemic. I was to be joined this morning by the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs and Constitutional Reform, the Honorable Kathy Lynn Simmons. However, she's unfortunately feeling unwell today, so she'll be doing her press conference later this week, where she will outline the throne speech initiatives for her ministry. Friday's throne speech provided the broad strokes of our plans for the years ahead. Over the next 2 weeks, ministers will set out the details of the critical elements of the government's strategy for social renewal and economic recovery. In conversation recently, I was asked how difficult economic recovery would be even without the pandemic. It was an excellent question, the answer to which is both frustrating and ironic. Without the coronavirus, the two most debilitating factors impacting the pace of our recovery and our ability to continue to help people by delivering on our promises are the $185 million guarantee for Caroline Bay and the minimum revenue guarantee payments for the new airport terminal. This is frustrating because imagine what we could achieve with the in excess of $35 million that we have been forced to pay to Skyport to date. Imagine what leverage capacity we would have to help the people of this country to advance our projects if our balance sheet was not impacted by the costs of the Morgan's Point guarantee, which have now reached almost $200 million for a failed real estate development. Even without the coronavirus, the previous administration left us with enough financial woe that renders our public health situation more dire. And it is especially frustrating as both of those projects, either the guarantee and the deal at the airport, were not supported by this party when we were in opposition. Make no mistake, the pandemic has slowed our progress. The ambitious agendas of 2017 and 2020 have been curbed by the need to ensure people did not go hungry and to deliver essential assistance that so many people needed over the last 20 months. Our mission may have been interrupted, but it is unchanged. The people are at the core of all that we do, and the economic recovery that is at the core of our plans for Bermuda will promote social renewal and the community development that we need. Before I elaborate on some of the initiatives in this year's throne speech, I would like to provide an update on the items contained in last year's throne speech. Last year, the initiatives for the Cabinet Office included increased capital development expenditure, moves towards a Bermuda digital bank, developing an ecosystem for technology companies through a Bermuda-based incubator, and modernizing Bermuda's intellectual property legislation. The Cabinet Office has executed our promise to support capital development projects which provide jobs for Bermuda and much-needed improvements to local infrastructure, including our local community and sporting clubs. To date, the Cabinet Office has awarded just shy of $1 million in capital development grants to 21 local clubs to assist in repairs for their facilities, from the installation of new roofs to replacing electrical infrastructure to complete renovations of clubhouses. These projects have used local contractors, electricians, painters, and more. In addition to the economic stimulus program under the Ministry of Public Works, this initiative has meant more Bermudians and more small and medium-sized local businesses have benefited by this government doing what we pledged to do. Moving on to the Bermuda Digital Bank, a business plan has been completed for the Bermuda Digital Bank. The extensive plan contains recommendations that can be implemented in the near term to enable better competition in local banking before the introduction of a Bermuda digital bank. The government and the Bermuda Monetary Authority are now reviewing the business plan and the proposals for open banking to determine the next steps. Cabinet's Economic Development Committee has now considered a draft report on the development of a tech hub and tech ecosystem for Hamilton. The report focuses on growing the existing strength of Bermuda's insurance and reinsurance model through technology. The Bermuda Business Development Agency will play a pivotal role in accelerating the development of this initiative and identifying those business stakeholders who will likewise be a part of this transformative effort. Moving on to intellectual property. Intellectual property is an evolving and complex area. Legislative priorities have, in this past year, focused on other areas, and we are working towards introducing amendments to Bermuda's intellectual property laws during the upcoming summer session of the House of Assembly. These changes will position Bermuda to lead again in this area. Significant revenue stands to be generated by this modernized regime, and so this too must be advanced in line with our economic recovery plan. Moving on to this year's throne speech. And I think it's important to note that this year's throne speech, there are not many grand new promises from the government, but a steady focus on executing the commitments we have made to the people of Bermuda. Let me start, when dealing with this year's matters underneath the Cabinet Office, begin with tourism. Bermuda's economic recovery will also be driven by a tourism recovery. Global tourism has suffered due to the pandemic, and economies are struggling to regain the consumer attention and confidence necessary to renew business and leisure travel. This period of uncertainty presents a unique opportunity for change. The opportunity is more than just changes to border policy or COVID testing policy. Ending or reducing those restrictions is essential, but those are short-term solutions to longer-term systemic issues. As the Minister responsible for tourism, I have a duty on behalf of the people of Bermuda to challenge the Bermuda Tourism Authority to do the best they can do with the $22 million of direct taxpayer funding that they receive annually. The independence they enjoy does not translate into absence of accountability. The same is true of any entity that receives public money. The throne speech speaks to the necessity for the leadership in tourism policy to be provided by the government. That leadership must start with openly confronting what the numbers are telling us. The cruise portion of this tourism economy has been increasing without parallel success required for land-based guests whose presence supports many hardworking families in Bermuda's hotels. The cruise economy is important, but Bermuda's formula for tourism success demands greater emphasis on those leisure travelers who come to stay on island. The question then is, how do we use our strengths to grow the tourism economy, and what change must we deliver to make the difference in today's crowded tourism marketplace? All of this is against the backdrop of historic pent-up demand for leisure travel. We know what we have: beauty, safety, and proximity to core markets. Those factors alone are not enough to tip the scales in our favor. Those strengths must be joined with the additional factors that will allow us to become the luxury destination we claim to be genuinely. We lack the social and lifestyle proposition that converts natural beauty and location into a must-visit destination. When we produce events or partner with firms, whether local or overseas, we must do so with the aim of working with those whose social reach is the tipping point in today's leisure travelers' decision-making. One travel expert unpacked what made some exotic gathering places so successful. They made the case that no matter how spectacular the settings, it was the social hub nature of the destinations, the social confluence of those who made it the place to be, that made the difference. This is not a new thing for Bermuda. We used to be the belle of the ball for those very same reasons, but that edge was lost and it must be regained. The audiences change, and to our credit, we are starting to play a different tune. But there is a long way to go. So yes, this is a challenge, but not an impossible one. And the unique opportunity presented by post-pandemic travel must be seized. Moving on to the BEDC. The throne speech set out the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation's invaluable contribution to the ongoing effort to empower Bermudians in business. In the last 20 months, the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation has provided $5.1 million in assistance to 287 local businesses. This core function is set to be enhanced with amendments to their act, which will modernize the BEDC and set the stage for the long-awaited redevelopment of North Hamilton. By extending the boundaries of the North Hamilton Economic Empowerment Zone, other historical and key sites of the area will benefit from the BEDC's work. Approved residential schemes are already provided for in law, and there will be a concerted effort to direct investment to those areas that have previously been neglected following the approval of the Northeast Hamilton Plan. The BEDC is both an advocate and an advisor on behalf of small and medium-sized businesses. And I'll be working with the BEDC's board and its dedicated staff to determine how that expertise can be deployed to support the island's communities of faith, houses of worship, and the third sector, as many churches and charities are struggling. The same people who the pandemic has impacted are the core of these institutions, and those donors who have historically supported them have reduced capacity to do so. During curfews and shelter in place, many congregations drew strength from the broadcasts and other new forms of outreach. The dedication of these sectors must be respected and sustained. Working together, we can help them navigate these times and, like other entities in receipt of assistance, emerge stronger. In closing, there have been 5 general elections in this young century. In 4 of them, the people of Bermuda had made clear the choice of this government should be entrusted to lead this country. Tomorrow is the 23rd anniversary of the first time that the people took that momentous step in 1998. Constitutional reform was signaled in that era also, and unsurprisingly, the same criticism then is being leveled now. But it bears remembering that this government is one whose actions in bettering the Bermuda Constitution brought an end to the unfair parish-based system where votes in Paget were worth more than votes in Warwick, and ushered in the decades overdue change of one man, one vote, each vote of equal value. Decade on, we must review and revise laws related to public access to information, strengthen privacy laws, and yes, reform and upgrade our Constitution. The Attorney General was to join me this morning, but as she is not here, she will be doing a press conference later this week, and I'll defer questions dealing with the issue of constitutional reform and public access to information reform to her, as she's best positioned to speak to the specific issues. The throne speech spoke to the imperative for change and how changes deferred are now an imperative for survival. We cannot stand still as a government or a country. We must adapt, be bold, and collectively take ownership of building a better future for Bermuda. If we wish to see that better future, then our work for change must continue and be unified effort amongst all Bermudians. The change in which we must all participate will lead to success in our economic recovery. The change in which we can all play a part will renew our communities and restore hope to our young people, dignity to our family, and continued comfort for our seniors. Thank you, and with that, I'm happy to take any questions from members of the media.
Members of the media, please state your name and your organization. We'll start here.
Okay, Kendall Trott with Bermuda Broadcasting. Many commenters, including the opposition party, have described the initiatives in the throne speech as vague. What was the reason for leaving out key details?
Thank you, Kendall. The throne speech is given by the governor every year, or is convened. So when Parliament is dissolved and it starts again, and the tradition is to have a speech from the throne. The speech from the throne was never meant to be an all-encompassing line item and details of all particular matters. If that was the case, it would probably still be there in the House of Assembly. But ministers of the government will be giving press conferences all this week and next week to outline the specific details there. And the specific details are not for the governor to outline, but it's for the ministers who are charged with executing those initiatives to outline. And that's why I'm here today. I wouldn't expect the opposition to say anything positive about the throne speech because they are the opposition.
Sean Connolly from the Royal Gazette. I'll be covering politics from now on. It's very nice to meet you. The question of the throne speech, just follow on to that. As you've acknowledged, there was very little new in the throne speech. Does this indicate that your government is running out of energy and imagination to be back after the pandemic?
I don't think that the government requires any more imagination. We have a very well thought out economic recovery plan, which was assessed independently, which identified 31 key priorities. The people of this country don't need more ideas. What they need is execution. And that's where the government is focused. And so from that perspective, yes, we prorogue Parliament and we have a new parliamentary session. There are new bills that will come before the House this year, which were outlined inside the throne speech. But the majority of our work is focused towards the successful execution of our platform pledges and the economic recovery plan. So we look at the pledges that we did last year. We look at the progress of which we made out of the pledges that we did last year. There are 33 individual pledges. 10 of them are completed. 22 21 are in progress. One was deemed not necessary to continue, as it could have been done without legislative means, and one of the matters that has been started. That work will continue. Ministers will update the public on that work in their press conferences over the next 2 weeks. But the work has to continue, and that's where the government is focused on. It's focused on execution. And that's, I think, what the people of this country want. They've seen execution from us over the past year, completing some initiatives, and that work will continue.
There was quite a pointed dig at the performance of the BTA. Can we take it that the BTA's days are numbered in its current form?
I don't think so. I don't think that there's any issue with the way that the BTA is currently structured. The BTA has a board. The BTA, like other government departments, receives policy direction from the ministry or the minister responsible for tourism. Those things have not changed. The BTA is responsible for sales and marketing. It's not a question to dig on the BTA. It's no difference than Skyport or other entities. We have to work together. And any entity must make sure that they are being challenged to deliver when they receive public funds. That is our responsibility. If we don't deliver something, we are challenged. For persons who are aimed and charged with delivering, that is the same message that will come from here. But we continue to work well. I have an excellent relationship, of course, with the chairman of the board of the Bermuda Tourism Authority and a good work relationship with the CEO. And we will continue to progress the matters insofar as tourism. You heard me say inside of my remarks this morning that we are beginning to sing a different tune. This isn't going to happen overnight, but we are going to continue to work in press. But it is the responsibility of the government to set tourism policy, because we will be the ones that will be held accountable if matters are not delivered.
Yeah, centralising the PATI requests. Is that going to cause delays? You said before that the opposition have tried to weaponise PATI. Are there other changes planned in that area?
I will defer those questions to the Attorney General, as the Attorney General will be leading that process, and she's more poised, certainly, to speak to those issues. But in a broad and general sense, I think what was said in the throne speech was very clear. The challenge that we have is that we have a significant number of public officers who are inside of all various government departments. And with the increasing complexity of requests, sometimes requests are delayed, sometimes they're challenged, and we find persons, which is just not their core job function, being distracted from their core job functions in so far as answering pattern requests. And the view is, after looking at this, it might be better if there was a centralized office that can handle and assist those public officers so that they can feel more supported and possibly to make the regime work better. But the Attorney General will be the best to speak to those revisions.
Okay. What's the broad training requirements? Are there problems in this area?
Sorry?
The broad training requirements.
Regarding boards?
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily say that there's problems in this area. What I'd say is that as boards become increasingly complex, there are some boards that have very specifics in regards to the type of expertise which is beyond their boards, and there are others which don't, which may have been older. And so we're just going to make sure to harmonize them because, will you let me finish answering the question?
Sorry.
Thank you. Because I think that it's important for recognizing that as things become more complex, that we continue to make sure that we upgrade the legislation inside this country. That is our primary job as legislators, and what we want to do is to make sure we have the best governance framework around. I think that it's important to recognize that Bermuda's governance framework is something that is envied by many countries around the world. That is the reason why we are known as a stable jurisdiction. That is the reason why we're continuing to attract international capital to our shores. And we want to continue to upgrade our governance framework. And so in the upgrade of various things for certain boards which may not have the latest government frameworks, we'll make sure those are put in place.
Right, okay, thanks. On GenCom, why is the government so involved in financing that situation and looking at term sheets? Because term sheets can be seen as contracts. Has the government been asked for any financial involvement or special permission regarding real estate sales at all?
I have no knowledge of any request for any special permission, but insofar as the involvement, the involvement is very clear. It was declared in Parliament in 2019 that the government was extending a guarantee for this particular project. That financing was all well put in place, and then we know what happened in 2020. So things, of course, had to be reconstructed. They are going through that process. They brought on lenders. They've put together a project, and the Ministry of Finance is going to review those items, because what this government is going to do is to make sure the taxpayers of this country are protected. If the same due diligence was done by the former government, we would not be discussing a $185 million guarantee from Morgan's Point that the taxpayers of this country had to pay for. Our Minister of Finance does things by examining things at their merit and making sure that the taxpayers of this country is protected, because he knows that our balance sheet cannot afford failure. So we are working through that process, and the country is grateful, and I'm grateful personally to have a Minister of Finance that can ensure that taxpayers are protected. So we're going to go through this. It's not easy. It's not expected to be easy, but what we're going to do is make sure that what comes out in the end will make sure that taxpayers are protected and we can advance.
Looking at things like term sheets, that's very, very detailed and involved, and that would suggest some kind of either linkage or connection between the government and the project.
I would not say so. What I would say is that I don't think that was any different than what was the deal that was put together for the guarantee at Morgan's Point. If you're guaranteeing a project, you want to know all the details of the project. That is due diligence. That is the way that this government works. That is the way that the Minister of Finance works. So when we have these criticisms about, things taking that long, we're going to do our due diligence, dot our I's and cross our T's, because what we are not going to do is going to find ourselves in deals and situations like the former government did, which end up costing taxpayers significant amounts of funds with limited budgetary resources.
Okay, thanks. David Birch, the Minister of Public Works, he hasn't been seen in public for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a situation going on there? Because should the public need to know what's happening? Because it's such a key role in government and rebuilding.
The acting Minister of Public Works, Minister Wayne Ferbert, is covering for the Minister, and if there's any further updates, we'll be happy to give them.
Okay. I know the Attorney General can't be here today, but the constitutional changes, would that be more domestic things, like, within boundaries and stuff like that, or would it be relations with London?
It would be a broad aspect of items. There's been numerous constitutional reforms which have been taking place in many various overseas territories. The AG can certainly speak to them. But there's also been things that have been requested by Government House, and certain things that we may look to go ahead and change. Constitutional change happens in a bipartisan process. It's always happened in a bipartisan process, and it will continue in a bipartisan process. And so from that perspective, I am certain that there are changes that will want to be advanced, but the Attorney General will be best placed certainly to speak to those particular issues. But absolutely, constitutional modernization is something that is important and is taking place in all overseas territories.
You did say last year, though, very similar things, and nothing actually happened. Are you afraid of taking that power from London?
I wouldn't say that nothing actually happened. What I would say is that the Attorney General is doing her research, making sure that she's collating various items. And to say that nothing has happened is, I don't think is, I would say, respectful to the work that is being done by the dedicated public officers, having to deliver as much as they've had to do over this past year in incredibly difficult circumstances. We may have an ambitious agenda, which was laid out in our first throne speech. Items and matters are continuing to progress, and I don't think that the government fears anything. We're going to approach it in the way which works best for the country.
Finally, can you flesh out any more on the children's legislation and the cybersecurity process?
Cybersecurity falls under the Minister of National Security, and the Minister of National Security, I believe, will be giving a press conference next week, so she can certainly speak to that. And the children's legislation falls under the Minister of Social Development and Seniors, who will be giving a press conference next week, and so she will certainly be able to speak further to those matters.
Okay, great.
And then we have one last question from Bermuda Broadcasting.
Yes, Kendall with Bermuda Broadcasting, Kendall Trot. What is your vision in the next couple of years for tourism and hotel development?
What we want to make sure is that Bermuda is recognized as a luxury destination, and we need to make sure that we upgrade our hotel stock. So my vision would certainly be redevelop Fairmont Southampton Princess, certainly the project on South Shore, with the former site of the Grand Atlanta. We want to make sure that is up and running. We know that there's going to be continued development in St. George's, the construction of the marina in St. George's, and the redevelopment efforts that are going to take place in the town of St. George. And I think that what's best important to note is that Bermuda needs to be more relevant. And so there needs to be a reason to come. It cannot just be beauty and sand. And so there is the need to continue to develop on-island capacity for events. There's still the need to make sure that there are more things that are taking place here in Bermuda that can be supported by a local community and attract visitors. So this last weekend, for instance, saw a preview of a Black Golf Weekend, something that the BTA is adding to their calendar of events, which will take place after our annual PGA tournament. And it's things like that that can extend the season, that can happen in the shoulder months, April and May, in addition to the months of October and November, that will continue to extend our tourism season. So I think that the future is certainly bright, but that is the vision. Bermuda has to become more relevant. What is good to know is that we are beginning to make the transition. So we look at the luxury products such as the St. Regis Hotel, certainly with the Lauren, an upgraded Fairmont Southampton Princess property, and the addition, those things are at the Bermudiana Beach. Those are additional stocks to our hotel development properties. We know that there's a new body that took over Cambridge Beaches, and we know that they're going to be making investments there at the Cambridge Beaches property as well. So it's about making sure that we continue to upgrade our stock, to make sure that we continue to attract investment into this space, and make sure that we can deliver value to the tourists who want to come to this country. So we are starting to make progress. It is long term. It is not something that's going to happen overnight, but as I said, we are beginning to sing a different tune, and we must make sure that Bermuda is more relevant.
Thank you, members of the media. Mr. Premier, thank you. That concludes our press conference today.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.